Ever notice how someone on TV, like a talking head or expert, will make some huge prediction
Uh-huh.
and they'll sound so sure of themselves, like they have a crystal ball or something. And then, well, things don't go that way at all. We've all seen it happen, I think, right? That confident take that ends up, well, looking pretty ridiculous when you look back.
Yeah, it's a pretty common experience actually. And it does get you thinking about,
Mm-hmm.
the folks who are shaping how we see things.
Mm-hmm.
What are we expecting from them? And why do we give so much weight to these really strong statements when the future is, always a bit of a mystery?
That's exactly what we're digging into today, this whole idea of being so certain about things that, well, you just can't be certain about.
Right.
We're looking at this recent discussion on YouTube on the Ring of Fire, and it revisits this specific example they found where a bunch of media figures were super confident about President Biden's health and how fit he was, all that.
No.
And this YouTube video kind of goes back and looks at what was said and how those predictions, well, they look now.
Gotcha. So what's the goal here?
Mhm.
Are we trying to rehash the past or play doctor or something?
No, not at all. It's not about that.
Okay.
The idea is more to understand the story that was being told, the level of confidence behind it and what these folks on the Ring of Fire have to say about how accurate those predictions turned out to be. Like, it's more about examining the gap between those confident predictions and, well, reality.
I see.
Yeah.
It's always fascinating to see that disconnect play out.
Right. So the YouTube video kicks off talking about this frustration we all feel, I think, when media people make these statements that sound like undeniable truths,
Right.
And they even bring up Alan Lichtman, the little professor who's got that system for predicting presidential elections.
Oh, yeah, I've heard of him.
They talk about how sure he was about one election in particular, and then they show this clip of him as the results are coming in. And it's almost painful to watch.
Really?
Yeah. The host even calls his reaction painful. He was so clearly wrong.
It's like watching someone's whole worldview crumble right in front of you.
Exactly. And I think what's fascinating is not just that he got it wrong, but that human element, Even experts are dealing with the same uncertainties as the rest of us. It makes you wonder why anyone would be so bold as to make those super firm predictions in the first place.
Yeah, you'd think they'd learn to hedge their bets a bit.
Right. And so this leads them to the main point of the video, what they call the fit and trim Biden narrative. This idea that there was this whole push by certain media folks to say with absolute certainty that President Biden was in top shape and that any concerns about his health were just attacks,
Interesting. So they were basically shutting down any conversation about it.
Pretty much.
Yeah.
And that's where they start pulling out these specific examples, actual quotes from different broadcasts. And it's wild to hear them again. It really makes you think about how strongly they believed what they were saying and how that might have impacted how the public saw things back then.
Yeah, hearing it laid out like that really puts it in perspective.
So they bring up Yu Hassan on MSNBC, who said that Republicans would regret the distorted image of Biden. And then she just flat out says, he's fine. He's as healthy as he can be. There's nothing wrong with him. I mean, talk about definitive.
Wow. No room for interpretation there. It's like
Yeah.
she's stating a scientific fact.
Right. And the thing is, it's not even presented as an opinion or anything. It's like she's speaking with this authority that completely shuts down any other viewpoint or concern. It makes you wonder what makes someone speak so definitively about another person's health, especially on TV.
Yeah, that's a good point. You'd think there'd be a bit more caution there.
Totally.
Yeah.
Then they go on to Joe Scarborough, who was saying stuff like, Biden is fit and trim. He's perfect. He's a perfect candidate.
Perfect. That's a pretty strong word.
Right. And the YouTube host really picks up on that kind of language, suggesting that it went beyond just talking about health and became more like political campaigning.
So it wasn't just about Biden's physical condition. It was about portraying him in a completely positive light.
Yeah, and that makes you think about the role of people in the media. Are they just giving their analysis, or are they actively trying to shape a narrative? And how does that impact what we believe?
That's a question everyone should be asking themselves, I think.
And then they mention Mika Brzezinski. She apparently had this 15-minute monologue defending Biden, with the message being, there's nothing to worry about at all. It seemed like a big effort to counter any doubts about the president.
15 minutes. That's a whole segment dedicated to that one point.
Yeah.
It makes you wonder what kind of impact something like that has on viewers. Does it put their minds at ease, or does it maybe raise more questions for some people?
The host even throws in a little comment like, I could go on forever, which makes you think there were tons of examples of this fit and trim narrative being pushed all over the place.
So it wasn't just a few isolated incidents. This was a pattern across different outlets.
Exactly. And that brings us to the main problem that the YouTube host is pointing out. It's not just that these predictions may have been wrong, but that the people who made them don't seem to face any consequences. They still have their platforms and their audiences.
It's a question of accountability,
Right.
right? If you speak with that much authority and you're wrong, what responsibility do you have to your audience? And what does it say if you don't even acknowledge that you might have been mistaken?
Yeah, there's a sense of disbelief in the video that these media figures can be so wrong and yet just keep going like nothing happened, no reflection, no apology. The host asks this very direct question: can I put any trust in what they're saying? After seeing these examples of where their certainty seems to have been misplaced.
That's a fundamental question for anyone who consumes news and commentary. Trust is essential in that relationship between those who provide information and those who receive it. When that trust is shaken by these really confident but ultimately inaccurate statements, it naturally makes you question how reliable they'll be in the future.
Absolutely. But then the discussion takes a bit of a turn because another speaker comes in and offers a slightly different perspective. This person acknowledges that everyone in the media makes mistakes, including them and the YouTube host. Nobody's perfect.
That's a good point. I mean, we all get things wrong sometimes. It's part of being human.
And the second speaker actually brings up their own past statements. They say that before a certain debate, they were worried about Biden slowing way down because of his age. They said they didn't think it was dementia or anything, but that they did see a decline. So they weren't always on board with the perfectly healthy narrative.
So they were willing to admit they had concerns even back then.
Right. And then they say that after the debate, their opinion changed. They say, I cannot defend this. This is no longer my opinion. A slowing down, there's something wrong. So basically, they felt like their initial worries were confirmed by what they saw.
That's a really interesting contrast. While some were saying there was absolutely nothing wrong, this person admits to having doubts that were later seemingly validated. It shows that there were a range of opinions, even among people who shared similar political views.
And what's also interesting is that this second speaker mentions getting criticism from some Democrats for saying negative things about Biden. It just goes to show how politically charged everything is, where even raising questions can lead to backlash from your own side.
That's a shame. It makes you wonder how much self-censorship goes on because people are afraid of those kinds of reactions.
They even talk about how they'd called for Democrats to consider other candidates and have a primary, bringing up Biden's suggestion that he might only serve one term. So they weren't exactly die-hard Biden supporters from the get-go.
So it's a much more complicated picture than just blindly pushing a narrative. It includes early skepticism, a change of heart based on what they observed, and the experience of being criticized for speaking out. It reminds us that the media landscape isn't always so black and white.
It all comes back to this question of media accountability and the trust we put in the people who are giving us information. The big question from the YouTube video is still there. Can I put any trust in what they're saying, especially after they've been so wrong in the past?
Right. And they wrap things up by using that analogy of the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and expecting different results. It's a way to highlight the idea that we might keep getting misled if we don't demand more responsibility from these media figures and maybe take a closer look at their past predictions.
So to sum up this deep dive, we've looked at the fit and trim Biden narrative as it was discussed on The Ring of Fire on YouTube. We saw how some media personalities made these really confident claims about President Biden's health and fitness. Then we explored the critique from the YouTube host who questioned those predictions and was concerned about the lack of accountability. And we also considered the more nuanced view of the second speaker, who admitted to changing their mind and showed how complex political commentary can be.
And this brings us to a really important point for you. In today's world where we're bombarded with information from so many different sources, it's crucial to think critically about what you're reading and hearing. How do you decide who's credible? And how should the track record of these media figures, the times they've confidently said things that turned out to be wrong, affect how you engage with their commentary in the future? It's something to keep in mind as you navigate the world of news and form your own opinions about what's going on.
Food for thought, for sure.
Absolutely.